We have a very clear proposal, detailed legislation, which the Labor... No, I haven't finished my answer. We've got a detailed piece of legislation, which I did table in Parliament, and our view has been the same. When the Labor Party is prepared to support that legislation in that form, then we will proceed with it.
Did the Coalition table their federal anti-corruption legislation in Parliament, as Scott Morrison has claimed?
Mr Speaker, the government's position on an Integrity Commission is very clear. There's 349 pages of well-drafted legislation to back it up. The Labor Party has no such proposal, Mr Speaker, and no integrity on this issue.
I seek leave to move the following motion that the government table its legislation for a National Anti-Corruption Commission.
Is leave granted?
Leave is not granted.
Leave is not granted.
The Coalition government refused to table its legislation for a federal anti-corruption commission.
He's never put the bill to Parliament. I think that's really the complaint. All he did was to have what they call a draft exposure bill, which means you put it out there and then you ask for submissions and comments. And all those comments, I think 90% of them, 98% of them were very negative.
If you have 349 pages of well-drafted legislation, why would you not want to table it in Parliament?
At least so far as the Coalition is concerned at the moment, they don't want to be scrutinised. And I think that's the real reason the Prime Minister has not pushed ahead with this legislation.
We developed a policy, we developed detailed legislation. Labor Party didn't agree with it.
The fact that the Coalition government refused to table their federal anti-corruption commission legislation has absolutely nothing to do with the Labor Party, or any other party or independent for that matter.
He's never put the bill to Parliament. I think that's really the complaint.
So if you've done the work, why wouldn't you put the bill to Parliament?
Defending his own refusal to debate a federal corruption commission.
I'm not going to have a kangaroo court taken into this Parliament.
His outburst following Tasmanian Liberal Bridget Archer becoming the latest government MP to cross the floor, joining independents and Labor trying to force a corruption commission debate.
I think we should suspend the standing orders and have this debate. The time has gone on long enough. Everyone in this House, I think without exception, thinks that we need a robust Federal Integrity Commission, that people should have trust and confidence in us, in the people that they elect, the people they send here. That's evidenced by the fact that there has been several bills presented to the House. All sides, the Greens, Labor, Liberal and the Independents have all said, you know, we've got a bill. But the problem is that the politics has wrapped it up so tight that we're not progressing that bill. There's no debate about the fact that we need one, but we're not having the debate on what it should look like. And we shouldn't be afraid to have the debate on what it looks like. And we will never advance this if we can't find a way to come together to collaborate on this. A good starting point for that is the member for Indi's bill. She's put a lot of work into it. She has consulted widely. She has collaborated. Is it perfect? Maybe not. Why don't we talk about it? Why don't we all come here in good faith and have those conversations and find something that we can take forward in the best interests of all Australians? It's why we're here. It's why we come here. It's the most important thing we do. Thank you.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg comforting her as the government loses the vote, but not by the absolute majority needed.
Morrison offered Archer a pair for the final sitting week. In other words, he offered her the right to be absent from the final sitting week so she wouldn't be required to vote. Archer declined. It seems we've found one of the few Coalition MPs willing to act with integrity. If the Coalition were to introduce their legislation in Parliament, it would allow for debate, and the chance that other Liberals may cross the floor to support amendments that may strengthen it. This highlights one of the key reasons major parties are so scared of the independent movement around the country. Independents are not tied to age-old political party loyalties. They're free to vote based on what is important to the people they've been elected to represent. It's such a revolutionary concept, I know.
And I think it's a pretty feeble excuse to say that he'll only put it there if the Labor Party go along with it. That's not how Parliament works. And that's not the real reason. You can see through that, and I'm sure the Australian people will see through that very feeble excuse for not doing this and carrying out this job and getting a fulfilment of the promise that was made 3 years ago.
So just how weak was the Coalition's draft legislation?
I'm not going to introduce a kangaroo court.
You can view the Commonwealth Integrity Commission consultation draft on the Attorney-General's website. You can also view the public submissions on the draft legislation. There are hundreds of submissions. The public submissions on the draft legislation have largely been scathing. When you scan through the public submissions, the same themes seem to come up again and again. The following clips pretty much sum up the key themes that come through the public submissions.
How would you grade the coalition policies on the issue of a federal ICAC?
Look, I'm very disappointed by the government's position on a federal ICAC, and I've given them an F, a fail.
I would rank it as a fail.
I've graded the coalition's policy as an E.
At an E on the A to F scale.
I give them a grade of E.
Details of what the coalition's put forward would be worse than having nothing. Effectively, it would be set up to give the appearance of a federal anti-corruption commission, but not actually be able to do the full job that we expect it to.
There are many deficiencies in the bill.
Narrow definitions of corruption.
The coalition's model also has a narrow focus on criminal conduct.
The bar for investigation is too high, requiring a suspicion of criminality.
They won't be able to investigate serious or systemic corruption risks because they may not fall under the definition of criminal conduct. An effective integrity commission must be public-facing. It should be able to act on tips and information from the public, media and public officials, including whistleblowers.
And there's no public reporting.
And public hearings ensure that proceedings are not secret, and it increases public trust as well.
There is no avenue for a complaint by a public service whistleblower. There is no avenue complaint by a member of the public. There is no obligation on parliamentarians to report corruption into the body. There's no power for the Commission to start its own investigations if it gets wind of a potential issue, and there's forced secrecy on the body.
The Coalition's draft legislation has been widely criticised as being inadequate by almost everyone outside of the Coalition themselves. Under the Coalition government, Australia has dropped 12 points on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. This is more than any other OECD country apart from Hungary, which also fell 12 points. Australia's rate of decline is also similar or steeper than other countries including Cyprus, Lebanon, Syria and Venezuela. So how committed are the Coalition government on delivering a federal anti-corruption commission?
I believe we should have a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, and that is the government's position. It's an integrity commission that I put more than $100 million into the budget for.
Despite what Frydenberg may try to pass off in his debate, the fact is that $0 have been allocated in the 2022-23 budget for a Commonwealth Integrity Commission.
In terms of this plan for an ICAC, Mr Frydenberg tells us he's put $100 million into it. The amount that was allotted for an ICAC in the most recent budget was $0. So saying that there's some commitment to that is patently false.
In the Sky News debate between Josh Frydenberg and Monique Ryan, Frydenberg's main challenger in the seat of Kooyong, Monique Ryan clearly lays out why a Commonwealth Integrity Commission isn't top of mind for the Coalition government.
I think the reason this government thinks that we don't need an ICAC is it knows what we will find. If we look at JobKeeper again, if we get back to JobKeeper, $88 billion, we were the only country in the developed world that had a stimulus scheme like that did not have transparency about where the money went. What I have found out is that Crown Casino, which had 15,000 employees, received $115 million in JobKeeper. But universities, which have 130,000 employees, none. Gina Rinehart's old school, St Hilda's in Perth, $4.8 million in JobKeeper. In Perth. Remember how much COVID Perth had? That's the first time COVID's been said in the last hour. Very little. And so while Gina Rinehart's school is getting $4.8 million in 2020, I'm leading a public hospital with an annual budget of $3.5 million to look after 45 staff and thousands of patients during an unprecedented pandemic. So what we need is transparency about the government spending and where they put our hard-earned at a time where we are really struggling from an economic point of view.
The fact is the Coalition had 3 years. 3 years to deliver on an election promise. 3 years to deliver a Commonwealth Integrity Commission. In the 3 years that have passed, all they've managed to deliver is a draft. As an outsider looking in, you'd really have to say there's only one reason why they may not want to deliver on their promise. You really have to ask yourself, what is the government afraid of?
The reason why there is no National Anti-Corruption Commission is sitting all in his front bench and behind him.
Personally, I think Australia can do without another 3 years of rorts and cover-ups. And it seems fairly obvious at this point that if you're voting for the coalition, you're not really voting for integrity. I'd hoped to get another video out on the battle for Kooyong this week, but I've been a little bit sidetracked and I got stuck into this ICAC stuff instead. So hopefully I'll be able to get a Kooyong video out soon. See ya.